Hey guys, welcome back to the show. So great to see you again. And we are here today. We're going to have a great episode on a system in the body that I think doesn't get nearly as much attention as it should, and that is the lymphatic system. But before we jump into the episode, a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, thank you for being here. And if you're feeling inspired by this episode, please, if you could do two things for me. One, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to the episode on, whether that's Spotify or Apple, wherever. And two, if you could share it with friends or family or anyone you know in your network who would get benefit from it, because that's how we reach more people. So that's it. Small ask. Now let's talk about this episode a little bit. Did you know that even stress could be causing lymphatic congestion in your body? In this episode of the Biohacking Superhuman Performance podcast, we chat with Desiree Despong about how scars, often mere afterthoughts, can profoundly influence our physical and emotional well-being. Desiree illuminates the importance of the lymphatic system, not just as an aspect of our immune defense, but as a pillar of overall health, and shares transformative approaches to therapy that include the use of innovative tools like the Flow Vibrate, or a vibrating ball for the perineal rehabilitation, and of course, the star of the show, the Flow Presso suit. Desiree sheds light on the lymph system's role functioning without a central pump and instead relying on muscle movement and breath, elements that are within our control. She explains the connection between stress and lymphatic congestion and how to learn how embracing calm through technology can offer not just a respite for the mind, but also bolster immune function. So Desiree Despong, a visionary leader and the founder and CEO of Medela Health in New Zealand, I am proud to say is a friend. And she's become a friend just in the last year and a half or so since I've met her. She's incredible. She stands at the forefront of lymphatic therapy with nearly 2 decades of unwavering clinical expertise. A true luminary in her field. And I'm not making these words up just for Desiree here. She really deserves these. Desiree is not only a seasoned practitioner, but an international educator who passionately imparts her profound knowledge through sought-after courses in lymph node release therapy. Her impact resonates way beyond borders as she graces stages and conferences both in the USA and New Zealand, inspiring clinicians worldwide with her insights. Now, if you're interested in purchasing a Flow Presso, 2 things I need to tell you. Number one is that this product is only sold to health professionals. But if you are a health professional, or if you know a health professional in your area and you think they should get a Flow Presso, definitely get them to listen to this podcast. If they are super enthusiastic, go to flowpresso.co.nz/buy and complete the form under your inquiry and use coupon code NAT, and that will save $400 off their purchase. Now, if you're interested in having a Flow Presso experience, you can go to flowpresso.co.nz/try, and the team will let you know if there's one located near you. Now, if you would like to buy a Flow Vibrate, or don't think the ball's available yet, but it will be at some point. But the Flow Vibrate, that little handheld lymphatic drainage device that I own and love, you can buy one of those off the same website and just use code NAT, and you will save 10% off your purchase. And now, let's jump into the episode. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Well, Desiree, welcome to the show. We're finally getting this done. It's been, how long? I think it's been 1.5 years since we've met. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's one of those, oh, we must get together sometime. But really what it is we need to record a podcast.
Yes.
And I am just so excited about this because this is a topic that so often flies under the radar. I mean, look, a lot of you guys who are familiar, who are in the health space are going to be, well, duh, lymph. Of course it's important. But to a lot of people, like we put so much emphasis on blood and urine, like all the bodily fluids, and we forget about lymph, and we can forget about how critical and underpinning it is to every single aspect of our health and immunity and everything. So I'm just super excited about this conversation. So welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm appreciative because I've been in the industry 20 years, and for years it's just been so hard to get the insight to the lymphatic system and the understanding of the important role it plays. So, it's fantastic that we kind of, unfortunately, 3 years ago went into a scenario that allowed the lymphatic system to almost gain its own notoriety. And so, but it's meant that it's opened doors. And I think it is, let's say, a buzzword at the moment. It really has become, it's really exciting to see it's getting its own limelight, and that people are starting to see the value to drainage and the function of the lymphatic system, which of course is the immune system. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, let's talk about the lymphatic system. I mean, let's unpack this, right? So the lymphatic system is, I just want to let you rip with it, because at some level, this is what you do. You educate people about what this lymphatic system is, why it's important. People hear about, lymphatic drainage or supplements or lymphatic massage even, but let's just really unpack what is this system in the body and this fluid, and why is it so important to get it moving? And then I'd love us to, kind of unpack a little bit, what are some of the ways that people can move their lymph just in day to day. We talk about, you have to exercise to build muscle and get this and that, but really it's probably one of the best ways to get your lymph moving as well. So anyway, let's talk about the lymphatic system. Let's start with that.
So I like to keep it simple, because then most people understand it. So I think we all know about the vascular system. So we know our heart pumps blood, and the blood feeds the tissue space, which we call interstitium, and that's feeding the cells of oxygen and nutrients. What the lymphatic system is like, the floodgates. It's the overflow of that tissue fluid that's sitting there around the cells. So it's like the waste system of the body. So I think it's important for people to understand that, yes, you have the bowel and the urine and the way we eliminate, but something has to take the fluid out of that tissue space. So all the byproducts. So once it goes into the lymphatic vessels, it's everything from cancer cells to virus cells to proteins. And so if we just put it as simply as it's the garbage truck taking your rubbish from your house and taking it to a transfer station. Now, we have lymph nodes throughout the body, and they're the powerhouse of immunity. So they've got all our different immune cells. So your B cells, which are antibody makers. You've got T cells, which are like the general of an army that are coming in to fight it, whatever's going on in the body. So it's where the fluid goes to, similar to a transfer station. We can get it recycled, we can destroy it. But the key for that is to clean that fluid before it goes back to the heart, which then it will go through the liver, and that's when you would eliminate the byproduct of that. So I think what we don't understand is, detox is a big thing. It has been a really big thing for a long time. But the problem is if the drainage pathways, e.g. the lymphatic system, isn't operating correctly, then what happens is, let's use the analogy, a goldfish in a bowl, or in an aquarium. So when it's in that water bathing and it's got the nutrients, which is the food we're feeding it, the goldfish is super happy, right? It's floating around. Think of that as your cell. So then what happens is, over time, if we don't have a filter, like a filter of an aquarium, then what happens is you get that buildup, right? That's why when you have a bowl for a fish bowl, you have to clean the water a lot to be able to let the goldfish to survive. So when you're thinking of that, just think of all that accumulation. And I think everyone would know that we've got more, we'll use the word junk or byproduct, coming into our bodies more than ever, between environmental, as well as the stresses that we're under is causing it as well. Is that buildup starts to change the fluid content. And then what happens is, if we don't filter out, like an aquarium, the goldfish will die.
Yeah.
Similar to the cell. And 100%. I think when we put those analogies in place, people can kind of understand. But also bearing in mind, it's your immune system. It's where the bulk of your immune response is. And therefore, to recover from illness, to overcome COVID, for example, we need a strong immune system that can A, detect, and B, to react. And I think now we're seeing more inflammation in the body than ever. And therefore, that's creating a miscommunication in the immune system. Therefore, we're seeing this issue where no one's actually draining efficiently and everyone's immune system's under significant strain.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the lymphatic system as an outcropping of the immune system is a really interesting perspective, right?
Yes.
I think, people kind of get, oh yeah, my lymph gets rid of trash, but at the same time, to really think about it as harboring immune cells, as, are we recycling these immune cells? Are we getting rid of these things? Are we getting rid of the proteins and the dysfunctional cells? You mentioned cancer cells. I'm sure senescent cells are in there as well. And all of this garbage needs to be taken out. Now, a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I can't remember when it was, the lymphatic system was discovered. Correct. So this is the lymphatic system specific to the brain. And that was a big deal. Yes. When researchers figured this out, right? Because I think the assumption until then had always been, oh, well, the lymph system, somehow it's getting in there, even though we've got this blood-brain barrier, and, the body is so cautious about what it lets in and out of the cranium. And so the lymphatic system, it operates separately. Correct. From the lymph system.
Yeah, it's within the blood. So you've got the glial cells. So what they found, it's actually at the moment, the research has only been so much so on animals. We still have not been able to work out how to, use the words, test the human brain for how well the lymphatics is functioning. So for years we've taught, if anyone's been teaching in the lymphatic world, draining the brain. Because when you think about how incredible the body is, and how it's created all these different, organisms and stuff that's going on in here, you would never think that it would just finish at the ears, and we've got 3 lymph nodes in the face. It didn't make sense that you would not have a lymphatics of the brain. So it does work differently, but it is meeting back into those, we call them cervical nodes in New Zealand, but the cervical nodes, so that it can be drained out. So the more that we can get lymph draining both brain and body, the more efficient. Now, I think one of the things they've identified, which I think is critical to the lymphatics, is that usually it's 7 hours of sleep to fully drain the brain. Now, most people I meet, every conference I speak at, the one question I always ask is, do you sleep more than 5, 6, 7 hours? And most people don't put their hands up, as in a straight solid sleep. That is one of the things we're identifying now, is that the quality of your sleep is impacting on many levels, and it will impact on lymphatics, because the more you sleep, anyone that deals with swelling issues will know their swelling goes down at night.
Yep.
Because we're in a parasympathetic state. And that is some of the 2 most important things that I feel is important: understanding your autonomic function, therefore fight, flight, parasympathetic. B, the fact that your sleep is imperative to how well lymphatic function is. Though I would argue that one day I think science will catch up and realize that when we stimulate lymphatics, we actually do, in a therapeutic sense, we are actually triggering the autonomic function or the change to the vagus nerve, which is impacting on parasympathetic, because we see it time and time again. But coming back to your question of the brain, I think the more that we understand, we're still early days, even though it was, I think, 2014, they learned about this, we're still trying to study. One of the things I was doing in New Zealand is I met with a group that have a really high-level brain scanner, and they're actually trying to now work out, because they can watch real live time, what's going on in the brain. They're trying to now work out how we can measure lymphatic function, but we're still early days. And that's why, I'm still waiting to see more research on this, but I think the key for us is so many people suffer from sinus issues. And I've noticed it significantly being here in the last 6 weeks in the US, that there is a lot of aggravants in your environment that really do trigger your sinuses. And it could be the water you drink and the food you eat as well. But, a lot of people deal with brain fog more now than ever. We've had a massive increase in dementia, Alzheimer's. There's definitely something going on in regards to that, and therefore if the brain isn't draining efficiently, then it's just as important if the body isn't. And we always think that this is a bit of a funnel, because you have so many lymph nodes in this quadrant as well that are trying to manage not only what you are breathing in through the nose, but what you're taking in through the mouth, and that all has to be impacting as well. Yeah,
that's super interesting. Okay, so then to facilitate, I mean, as far as we know, so I mean, we're still kind of figuring this out, right? The lymphatic system, does it have its own conduit, or is it using these nodes to basically drain into the main system? And then, do we know that yet?
So my understanding is that it sits within the vessel, the blood vessel of the brain. So it's trying to drain through there, and then it meets into the lymphatics, into the cervical or cervical nodes, and then it's draining out through there, because otherwise it would go through the spinal fluid, which wouldn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense,
right?
No.
And there's no, well, we don't know if there's any cleansing process there yet, but we're not aware of one. So it will, for me, it must track back through. The other option is it could end up straight in the blood, and that's just, again, it doesn't make sense unless it's just going to get processed straight through the liver.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm a little bit just careful at the moment, because I think we're still learning, and bearing in mind that we're only doing this on animals at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the New Zealand brain.
Well, the New Zealand brain is unique.
And the US brain, yeah, it is. That the human brain, yeah, I think we're waiting for more information to be 100% sure on what, because this was, if you notice, there's not been much progression since that finding.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still trying to wait to see what else that they can learn. But it does not make any sense to me that you would stop the lymphatic system at the ears.
No,
you know,
it's got to go somewhere.
It has to be. There has to be more to this, and I think the further we can learn, the better. You know, and the more we can learn. And you know, I was at a tech conference in New Zealand, and I was in amongst people in the universities that were very much focusing on brain function, and every one of them I challenged around the lymphatics, and they all looked at me blank. They weren't sure how to even answer any of my questions. So if we're not even understanding it on that level, then, you know, how do we filter that down into delivering education to people? But I think the key for me is, if you've got a sinus problem, if you've got a puffy face, if you've got, you're dealing with...
Even under the eyes,
Under
right?
the eyes, yep. Both hollow or very puffy.
Yeah.
You know, brain fog. If you're dealing with any of those conditions, then you are definitely having some sort of accumulation in the brain. And that is always a concern for longevity in the future.
100%, 100%. Another place to look. Now, this is less about the brain, as far as we know. Who knows? It could be tied in. But I think it was Mindy Pelz who was talking about under the arm. Are you puffy or are you hollow in the armpit? Because if you've got a ball there, if you're puffy, that's a sign of lymph that's not draining. Whereas if you're hollow,
yes,
then that would be a sign of proper drainage and less buildup.
And that's why it's called an armpit.
Pit, as opposed to not an arm puff. So just so you know,
yeah,
like if anybody's getting confused, it's an armpit, not a puff.
Just to be a little bit more though, some people do suffer from a fat accumulation, and they talk about the second breast. And it is a buildup of fat tissue that can occur in the armpit. But most people, I find, are dealing with an accumulation of lymphatic fluid, both in their armpit, but another good indicator is coming around into the subscapula, so around the back, under the back of the arm there, down the side, where you get quite puffy around where the where the bra is.
Yeah.
You know, that's another good indicator that you are not draining efficiently through the armpit. And bearing in mind, if we have to think of the scenario of breast cancer, most clearing of lymph nodes are done in the axilla, so the armpit. So it is a hub of activity. So we really do want to get that moving. It's really important for breast health, but for also lung health as well. It's just as much a part of the accumulation. And you can actually get from a surface lymphatics, the way we drain from a surface perspective, is anything from the waist up can also end up in the armpit. So it is accumulating a lot of fluid, and therefore it is another big indicator. Also sinus, you will get swelling in the armpit often.
From sinuses.
Mm-hmm. It's
Interesting.
a backflow. It's like think about it as a river or a stream, and as children you would put in rocks and bricks and try to create a dam. Mm-hmm. It's no different. When there is an accumulation, you start to back up, and the same thing occurs in lymphatics. Is if you're not able to get through those rocks, or let's say the accumulation, you'll find that then you start to fill out in other locations of the body. So as a practitioner, when we're draining lymphatics, so when we're trying to manually help your body do that, you'll find that you'll start to get rid of that surface buildup. So the next session may be really tender because those lymph nodes now are able to be touched, first and foremost, because you've got away rid of the accumulation. But they've been struggling for a while, so they're no different to swollen lymph nodes with a sore throat. They're tender. And so you're getting somewhere with people, but it requires pumping and moving to actually get lymph going. And I think you asked about earlier, how do we move it? There's one part that's called what they call a lymphangion, which is a muscle that's attached to the lymphatic vessels, and it's a bit like squeezing a towel out. So it's that as it moves its way through, and that's actually stimulated by the parasympathetic. So that's where it gets interesting again. Sleep helps to reduce fluid.
So in a sympathetic state where you're in fight and flight, I mean, the lymphatic system is not a priority. Like at the end of the day, in a sympathetic state, when you're fight and flight, your body's prioritizing survival.
Yep.
And the lymphatics don't rank.
Get my muscles to run.
Yeah.
I've got to run, I've got to breathe, I've got to get going.
So it's not until you get into this parasympathetic state which I guess is why also something like a very gentle yoga class, because we all know yoga can be it's going to be as sympathetic as a CrossFit class, right?
Yes.
If it's very hardcore.
Yes.
But to get into the more of that yin yoga, more of the restorative yoga, probably can facilitate that kind of wringing out of the vessels to a degree.
Correct. Some of the best research I've seen on, especially people that deal with lymphedema or lipedema, is on yoga. It's one of the best ways to move your lymphatics because of the breath. And because of the movement. Now, so the lymphatic system, unlike the heart, doesn't have a pump.
Right.
And it's going against gravity. So
Right.
it doesn't really work that great unless you move. So skeletal or muscular movement, like yoga, like rebounding, all those things that we used to do.
I was going to say the vibration plate,
The vibration
rebounder.
plates, correct. Yeah. Walking, running, movement is going to help still move the lymphatics because we're pushing it uphill, literally. And then probably the third one, which is the most important one, and I see it as a significant issue, is the breath and how well we breathe. So, they've even shown that to propel fluid, so just to understand, if you've got swelling in your ankles, you've got to get that fluid to the back of your knees, into the groin, up through. Now you either take it through surface, which I said would have to take it to the axilla, or you come up through what they call a thoracic duct, which is up through the center of the chest to meet to the left subclavian vein, which is above on your left shoulder, which is to meet with the heart. So that's a lot to have to get somewhere, right?
It's a long way.
So the breath is the big part for me, because the breath will actually improve the diaphragmatic pumping to move that fluid up through that chest wall to be able to meet to that left subclavian. And so many people are sitting at desks now. They're not moving as much as they used to. We're getting more and more accumulation in the pelvic floor, and this could be why we have more issues for both women and men in that area, because it's stagnating. The fluid isn't moving to the same degree. We shallow breathe, especially if we're stressed. And we're seeing increased, anxiety, stress issues anyway with COVID. So we know that the breath will be impacted by that. And it is one of the areas, if any self-care to help lymphatics move, is really focus on deep abdominal breathing, because it is significant. But guess what? It engages parasympathetic, which again will engage lymphangions, which again will help more lymphatic drainage.
That's amazing. And so that deep breath, guys, I think that one of the things we forget is deep breathing. What a lot of people will do is inhale and pick up their shoulders, right? We're chest breathing. And the idea here is to place your hand on your belly and breathe into your belly. So allow that belly to come out, which of course none of the girls want to do, because we always want to be sucking in our belly,
Yes.
which is probably part of the issue in the first place. But to breathe deep into the belly, allow that expansion of the belly out, and then use the belly coming back in to move the breath back up. And it's worthy to just spend even 10 minutes in the morning just doing this, whether you're standing or sitting. And I would say standing is probably better, because as soon as we're sitting, we're creating this angle that's impeding the flow of fluid up and down.
We do have a really good one where you can, if you're capable of doing it, is you lie on the floor with your bottom up against a wall,
Legs
and you
up the
place
wall.
your legs up the wall,
Yeah.
and you do your breath. And that will help drain the legs into the abdomen, and then the breath will help pull it up to the termini, so that we're above the clavicle here. And so that's a really good one, but it actually does down-regulate. So if you are someone who is, got a stressful day and you need to just calm down a little bit and get your body into sleep mode, that is one of the quickest ways to shift that out.
Well, that actually lowers cortisol, right? I mean, that's what you were saying about down-regulating. I remember when I used to do CrossFit, when you did like one of those workouts where you literally, your body was pretty sure, surely we're getting chased by a lion. Like, why else would we ever be doing anything like this? And so at the end of the class, it would be legs up the wall.
Yes.
And it's amazing how you can feel your whole system down-regulating and coming back into some kind of balance. And it's actually a great thing to do before bed.
Yes.
Just
Absolutely.
that simple, stupid little exercise of nothing is phenomenal. So, okay, so we're moving our bodies to limb. Is there, like, I have spoken to people, actually there's one lady in particular, I think you know her, she's in New Zealand. And in her case, she's so blocked up that even doing manual lymphatic drainage isn't working for her. And what do you think is up with that? Like, it's...
So there's two things we look at. One is what is going in to keep aggravating the situation further. So is there medication, is there food that are aggravants? Because for me, if you can't move and sustain movement of lymphatics, there has to be something that's impeding the lymphatic flow. So that's what I said. The first one is we're thinking about, well, are you still eating something that's creating an inflammatory response that then is creating the lymph to be still an issue? And then the other one is we use the similar philosophy to chiropractors or osteos, structure equals function. So are they misaligned? So is their pelvic, is their pelvis out in some form? That means that the flow of the vessels, which are our lymphatic capillaries, are all kind of moving upwards. So, no different to a scar. A scar can impede the lymphatic function. So if scar, for example, if someone's had any sort of surgical on their knee, or even brain's just gone dead, when we have our children, a
C-section.
C-section, sorry everyone. Still acclimatizing to Las Vegas time. So if you've had a C-section, you've got a scar, which is usually, vertical. Horizontal instead of vertical.
And it's deep.
And therefore, if you think lymphatic vessels are trying to go up, then it's going to impede the way. So what we say is it reroutes. So especially if there's some deep scarring, it's having to find a different pathway. So no different to if I go back to the stream again, when you build it up so much, it starts to find a different way to route. It's the same thing with the body. So all of these things impede the flow. And that's where, for me, you've got to really think about what is going on in the body that's stopping the flow function, because it's never just one thing. And that's why, and everyone's individual. So we always look at scars. We always look at what are you eating? What are you drinking? What is your life really like? Are you eliminating efficiently? Pooping, peeing, all those things that the body needs to do to get rid of waste. So are your drainage pathways able to be moved through the system? Is the liver okay? And then are you misaligned in some way that's impeding the actual way that the lymphatic system can flow?
And then the nervous system.
Oh yeah, that's
right,
another
because
whole
that
story.
being that chronic, because like we come across people who have been sick for so long.
Yes.
They've been out of balance for so long, and it becomes like this self-perpetuating loop where I think doing the nervous system work is almost as it is as important as there's the mechanical piece of it, and then that nervous system, which is also mechanistically causing issues, and yet doing it just from something that we don't think of as mechanistic, right?
Yes, I think it's the missing link. I think we've completely forgotten, like if you look at all the ways they've gone in the centuries of health management that's gone on, whether it's Eastern, Ayurvedic and all the rest, they're all talking in different ways. They talk about the resting of the soul, the rest, the meditation, the need, because I think we've created a new normal, And the new normal in our studies, when we were doing this as part of our tech, was that heart rate variability, we were finding, and this wasn't just your everyday person, this was first responders as well, who were trained to manage stress, especially, let's say, the equivalent of your SWAT. We did AOS, and so that's Armed Offenders Squad in New Zealand. And they were more stressed lying down, so they were a more sympathetic state, high attention index, higher standard deviation than what they were standing.
You're kidding.
No. And we were seeing that even like worse than firefighters, because they wake to go to response, so they will go to bed and they respond with being woken to an alarm. And we started to go, this is incredible. And you were watching it in everyday illness as well. It was the same thing. It was like if we think about the autonomic nervous system, think of the deer. I think this is a good analogy. The deer, and then the lion comes to chase the deer. What is the deer? The deer takes off, it runs for its life. And then as soon as it feels it's out of danger, it just goes back to eating its grass again. It's happy as, like no issue.
It doesn't sit and think about, oh my God, that lion, it was crazy. Thank God I got away from the lion. Yeah. What if there'd been another lion?
Are they still there?
Are they still there? Yeah. So they don't. They release, right?
They release.
Maybe does that full body shake that dogs do to reset their nervous system, and then they're done.
Definitely. And I think what happens with us, though, is that we're going into this state and we don't come out as well anymore. And because we've had a perpetual amount of issues in the last 3 years where we didn't know what was going to happen next, that automatically puts someone into a state of fear or uncertainty, and that puts us into response mode. Mm-hmm. So we're waiting for the next thing. And what happens is people's ability to regulate, and from sympathetics, parasympathetic, has become a further advancement in space between the two. So knowing what a sense of calm is different to what really it needs to be. And we see that. So I've just done a bit of a road trip through Virginia, and I was doing this for police officers and paramedics and firefighters, and we were only giving them like 15-minute sessions. Now these people are going through, like, not only did they go through their own personal trauma with the pandemic and shutdowns and everything, but they also are seeing it every day, and the people and the stress that's out there. And most police officers now will say that they give a prayer every day they come home alive, because it's that traumatic out there. But what was fascinating for me was how that moment of just putting them in our technology and seeing that shift where they came out when, wow, I feel so different, because you give the body a chance to sense what it feels like again, to actually be in a state of calm. Now, remember, this is an autonomic nervous system, right? It's autonomic. So, if it becomes a struggle, because we can try and do meditation, we can try and do all these different things, and over time, yes, that will reset it. But it takes time. Yeah. Because the body's got into a habit of being prepared. And I think if people understand that, they don't get so hard on themselves, or why can't I meditate? Why can't I regulate? It's because it's become accumulative.
Yeah. And I think that's why the rise of technology, different technologies to help us to hack into our nervous system to get it to release, right? So whether it's, something you wear on your chest, or, there's a bunch of different technologies right now around to help both the vagal nerve tone to improve, to give a signal to the brain, we're safe, it's okay. But to your point, we can't bully our way into it. We can't muscle our way into a parasympathetic state necessarily. And I also think that's why we're seeing there's so much more attention being paid to things like psilocybin or CBD or all of these compounds that we're looking to, what can we access to help the body, or to help take our minds offline a little bit, to allow the body to get into that restorative state that it needs. And so lymphatic drainage, we understand the importance of lymph. So you've talked a bit about some of the conditions that are really affected by lymph blockages. And obviously cancer is at the top of the list, and so often doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, there's breast cancer, but any cancer needs this immune system, this immune flush, if you will, to be efficient. But not even, if you have a cold, if you have a flu, if you have the worst flu that's come across, over the last number of years, kind of thing. And I also think, this whole issue of being in a sympathetic state all the time, never mind COVID, like right now, even the state of the world, like you turn on the news, probably, we all know that the worst thing you can do before bed is turn on the news. It's always been the worst thing, and it's not getting any better. So
yes,
sadly, giving yourself that opportunity to shut down. So let's talk a little bit about what you've invested so much of your time and energy into, like a technology that is really next level. And you know what, guys, this isn't actually the kind of thing that you would necessarily buy for your home, because it's really a practitioner tool. Although there was that woman at the biohacking conference who convinced you to sell it to her, and now she's had such incredible success with it. She's opened a little practice of her own to give relief to people through this. So let's talk a little bit about the technology and what it really is, because there's other versions of it out there, but there's nothing quite like what you're doing. Having tried them all, I'm just going to say.
Thank you. So it actually came about, I was teaching here in the States a different technique in lymphatics, and it came about out of a frustration from a doctor here who wanted to find a solution, because it's actually not easy to get really well-trained lymphatic drainage therapists. And to be fair, it's time consuming on us. It takes about an hour and a half to do the whole body, and the results are cumulative over time, so people have to invest at least maybe 6 to 10 sessions, and so people kind of want a quick fix, right? And though I'm not into that, it was more about, is there a way that we can create this? And so he encouraged me, though I was only a clinician, I didn't think I had the ability to create tech, but I went back to New Zealand, and I kind of became the mad scientist. I was in a basement, kind of, that's exactly how it was.
Perfect.
Because, I needed the time, and I actually had I had a 12 practitioner center. It was really busy, and I was a bit burnt out. So it was a good opportunity to try and do something different. So I studied around the world. I did look at a lot of different tech. It's kind of really funny. I almost want to set a museum up of what I've got, of everything I gave. But what I found it was the particularly sequential movement of the technology. So the way the compression pumps you had to mimic what the lymphatics did. And I think one of the greatest, I think were you there? No, one of the greatest compliments I got was in Orlando, and upgrades, and it was a ED doctor, and he said he had tried every compression that he thought was around, and he said this would have to be the closest I've seen mimic the lymphatics, which was a huge honor to me, because that was my hope, was to do that. So long story short, we rolled out February 2020 with this technology. So it kind of looks a little bit scary, A lot of people look at it and go, I'm not getting in that. And because you look like you're, a bit of a transformer, or someone's about to put you in a moon suit and send you to the, the moon. But it's not that at all. I relate it very similar to the swaddle. It's like you're being wrapped up, loved, and hugged.
Yeah.
And it's the only way to take away the concern about it. And we can modify it to anyone that's got, does deal with anxiety and stress. We can remove the arms. We've got all these different ways. And that's why it's practitioner only, because we found that, we really needed to think about the individual, and we wrap you individually. So we wrap you for you. We adjust every setting for you. So it's a combination of compression and heat. And what I found with doing that is, not only did I create the movement to get the flow within the lymphatics, but I was trying to also get vasodilation. I was trying to get blood flow, because it's a circulatory system. And there is issues where the blood vessels will leak what they call plasma protein, and it goes into the tissue space, and the only system that can return it back to the blood is the lymphatic system.
Right.
So you need those two to flow well together to encourage movements. You want improved blood flow, but you also want improved lymphatic flow, and then together you create this unique combination. But with everything, life brings you challenges. So we launched February 2020 to March be locked down as a whole country. And so that kind of threw us a little bit, but we had this critical incident in our hometown with the police. And it meant that the team that were involved, which is similar to your SWAT, just needed to downregulate. It was quite a traumatic situation. So we brought them in. They asked me if they could test my theory, because they'd been hearing rumors of the studies we were doing with heart rate variability. We were finding low, blood pressure. These people were, de-stressing in the suit. So we put them through this, and they were one was ex-army, he had never felt anything like it. So we went then into a pilot study, and this is when we were measuring everything, from heart rate to blood pressure to sleep measures to stress and anxiety. We saw this significant change in sleep. So it was a 91% improvement.
Wow.
And that is considered significant in research, of which there was a 25% change. So what that meant for a lot of these, some were sleeping 8 hours for the first time in 40 years. Some were getting at least 2 to 3 hours better quality of sleep. And then we knew we were onto something different, not just what the original development was for lymphatics. So this kind of set me off on a little bit of a tangent to try and work out the why.
Yeah.
And that's when we identified we're delivering similar to deep pressure therapy. So people would know about weighted blankets now. It's kind of a thing to downregulate. Well, this was taking it to another whole level where we were swaddling you. So wrapping every part of your body. So there's a foot piece, there's a leg, abdomen, arms, and then there's a back piece as well. And the idea was to bring as much warmth and compression to your body so it's full body. Where I struggle with compression and the way we've dealt with our lymphatics, and this is, my view on this, and, but it's a whole system. And I could never understand in the lymphology industry why we only managed one limb.
Yeah, so like we're obsessed with legs, and then it stops right there.
Yes.
So just to explain to you guys who are just listening to this, and I mean, even if you're watching, we haven't actually hauled anything out, but imagine that you have a wrap that goes around your foot. You have another wrap that goes around the bottom of your leg. We now have the next wrap goes around the thigh all the way up to the hip, right? We now have a wrap that does your whole torso, and we have wraps around the arms, right up. So, and what's happening is the compression starts at your toes, and it comes in waves up the legs, through the torso, and then the arms, right? The arms are last?
Yes.
It's been a while since I've been in this thing. I'm counting the minutes till I get back in. But literally, imagine that you're just there's this warm, gentle, and the pressure is adjusted, as Desiree was saying, to the individual. So for some people, it's going to go deeper than others. But it's like this whole combination of heat, milking, and deep pressure points being hit at the same time.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it's when it gets to the torso, it is a feeling like you've never had. There's nothing can really prepare you for it. And I mean that in a very amazing, pleasant, unbelievable way.
We have so much going on in our abdomen, and I'm trained in an Eastern view. So, I've never understood why we didn't do more stomach massage, for example, or more heat around the kidneys. And, just with the understanding of Eastern philosophies, kidneys, our chi, our energy, our vitality. And of course, we need our kidneys to function well for not only our adrenals, so our stress response, but also the way we regulate fluids. So, there was so much validity around why you would consider this as an important part. But more importantly, as I said earlier on, if I want to get swelling from my ankles up to my heart, I need to get it through the abdomen area. And therefore, my concern has always been if we pump fluid, say, for example, just from the legs to the abdomen, and you haven't got the ability to move it up, so you're not active enough or you're chronically unwell, then how do we get it from there and get it up to your heart without it? And then the concern is, are we creating another problem by pooling, or what is an analogy we use in lymphatics, where we leave the fluid there to stagnate there now.
Yeah, which is going to make problems in that area.
Exactly. And so that's why for us. But it is how we came about. So when we ask you to clearly define when you're in session with us, is it a hug or a blood pressure cuff squeeze? We do not want it to be blood pressure cuff. And the reason we started asking about the hug was so many people in my initial studies were going, I feel like I've been hugged all over. And so we keep that analogy, and it's a good analogy because people can understand that. Some people don't like being physically hugged, but when you get them in the suit, they go, oh. I mean, the cutest was a firefighter the other day, and he comes out after a small session and he goes, wow, I really feel like I have been hugged all over. Yeah. And I thought that was such a neat thing to even hear from, people that are out in the front line dealing with what they do, that they can even recognize that.
Yeah. Why don't you talk a little bit about the children? Because I think that's so remarkable. So we're all sitting here having this big grown-up discussion about toxins and clearing waste and the whole 9 yards. But I want to keep bringing it back to the nervous system, because I think we cannot stress enough how critical that deactivation of the nervous system, or activation of the other arm of the nervous system, is so important. And you've done some really amazing work with children with, whether it's autism or emotional dysregulation issues. And you have this one story about the little boy that, brings me to tears every time you tell it.
There's been a few of other chronic fatigue.
No, well, the little boy who'd lost his parents.
Oh, yeah. So in the United States, there's a bit of a ruling around anything under the age of 22 with FDA is considered an adolescent. So to be able to get recognised, as a regulatory requirement, you need to go and do studies with children. So we've had a couple of different studies underway in New Zealand, one with a particular group of children in a school, and they ranged from autism right through to learning difficulties. They were a group of what we call red zone, which is children that are dealing with in environments that are not healthy on any level, who they're living with, etc. So they started the study, and they were sending me photos and giving me insight into what happened. And there was one particular child who was suffering from autism, and he came in and they put him in, and they didn't think he would lie there long enough. And the first one, so he was really funny, because they texted me and said, "Oh, this needs to be your byline," and it was, the parents did not think he would last more than 5 minutes.
Well, I'm surprised he allowed them to even wrap him up,
yeah,
right? Because that in and of itself would be the first hurdle.
Well, actually, the autistic kids love it, because it's a real hold. It's a real safety. It's like weighted blanket. So anyway, the first thing he says is, "It feels like a prison, a warm prison, and a prison you want to go to." And I went, okay, that's probably not good for our branding, but okay. But the most emotional one was a little boy who had no father and recently lost his mother. And he was asked to understand that it had to be a hug, because we really have to talk with children through to get that real recognition. It's not supposed to be sore or hard. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he gets out of it, and he just looks at everyone with tears in his eyes, and he goes, "That's the first hug I've had since my mum died."
Okay, losing it again. Yes.
It was, but one of the more beautiful ones is I did a study with chronic fatigue, and I had this 11-year-old who chronic fatigue is tough in kids, and he had been 2 years, and he was only like 2 half days a week going to school. His mother was devastated, because, husband and the father and mother, but the mother was really struggling. She couldn't understand this condition and how it was so debilitating. And anyway, we starts putting him through, and he starts to change. He's all of a sudden out playing soccer, and then 3 sessions he wants to go to school more, and he's not lying on the couch every day. And it was so profound to watch. And he just started this, it was like she was getting her son back. And then I recognized that, hang on a minute, if he's been under this condition, the mother's been under so much anxiety and stress to manage it, let's put mum in now. So you put them both in the same room together. And I'm going to say, I've been trained in New Zealand to understand energy, I'll put it that way, and you really felt this beautiful experience going on between them, and she was crying throughout the whole session, but you leave them to just do what they're to do. And he, of course, children only have 20 minutes, adults have 40, and so he's watching her, and she goes to sit up, and she's just got tears flooding down, and she goes, "I can't believe how stressed I was. I just, and she's so emotional." And I kid you not, this 11-year-old walks up, sits beside her, rubs her back, and says, "But Mum, this is what Flowpresso does. It helps you let go." Oh. And that's when we saw the magic change. That was when we realized that we're too quick to just think of the person that's ill.
Oh, the people around them.
We forget about the care and the support around them, like especially with cancer, that the caregivers, they are just as much in need of support. And what then led me was to go into a whole lot of study, and there's actually research to show that a child with chronic fatigue, there is a strong link to a mother going through a traumatic pregnancy or birth. Mm. So there's always this intergenerational effect or intercellular effect that we're just not recognizing. And I think, for me, Flowpresso came out of lymphatics, but man, as it opened up so many other opportunities from a sense of, we now know cells have a memory. We now know that we hold our trauma. We now know that we have intergenerational trauma. That if the space is held enough, long enough for you to feel safe again, then that allows you to let go of what no longer serves you, right? So for me, it's like, it's not, and then the lymphatics, if you want to understand emotion, if you're into Louise Hay or Annette Noontil or all those people that speak about that, it's all about letting go. What do you want? Why are you still holding on to something? What is it you want to let go of and allow you to get rid of the anxiety so you can be back into harmony? So, for me, it makes total sense, but it's a real holistic approach. And science is catching us up to make it valid, because I'm very big about research and validity and being able to explain all these things. And as I use in New Zealand, it's not just about the woo-woo, as we call it. It's putting something to it. But the children are amazing. And what was the most beautiful part is they had one a week for 6 weeks. And what we found is I met one of the teachers who was he said to me he wasn't really believing anything would change.
Super skeptical. You want those people.
They're great. And he had 2 in the trial, and he said not only are they more engaging, they're happy, they're actually doing their schoolwork again. And then they had one who had a lot of truancy and was not turning up to school, but he always turned up every day for that flow presso session.
Interesting.
So children are, there's no placebo with children, right? So I think it's one of the most beautiful things. So we're going to continue our studies because we want to be able to get it recognised as below 22 years of age, which we find quite hard to understand in New Zealand, that you're considered an adolescent then. But, it just helps, But I think most adults have this, are a little bit more complex to be able to take there, but we do see it. More and more counsellors and psychologists are using it now because of the ability to create an opportunity for you to feel safe again, calm again, and then you'll find people will open up.
You would think so, like to do a flow presso before a therapy session, like especially with people dealing with deep trauma.
It's magical.
Would be unbelievable. So, so all you guys are probably sitting there thinking, okay, well, this is great, but I can't get it in my house. What the hell am I supposed to do with this information? So first of all, the information is about understanding the critical importance and understanding lymph in a different way, right? And its connection to not only your health and your immunity, but your nervous system regulation, which ultimately boils down to even your emotional health, your ability to regulate, your ability to sleep and restore and do all of those important things. So if you don't own a clinic, if you know someone who owns a clinic around you, this is the type of technology that I think we need to start bringing forward in the world. Like, you've got the Theraguns and all the things that are going to beat it out of you.
Yeah.
But at some level, this is kind of a next level. And what I love about it, even though you mentioned woo, the woo piece, there's so much physical benefit to this that even someone who's not willing to go to the emotional piece can kind of anchor themselves in the physical piece and then witness the emotional happen as a result. Like there's so much already value in the physical piece. But just to not leave you guys with nothing, because Desiree did spend some time sitting there thinking, okay, but what can I send people home with? Like, what can we do to take this home? And so there's 2 more things we're going to talk about quickly. I don't know how long we've been talking, but I'm guessing for a while, that are things that you can use at home. It's not going to give you, like, let's be clear, it's not going to give you the experience of a flow presso treatment. Ain't going to happen. But these are, one of them I own, and it's a very beautiful little handheld tool that you can just sit and hold it in places where you might have lymph accumulation. And with a very gentle vibration, and this is the thing I think with lymph, it's a little bit like a muscle. My guess is if you go at it too hard, you may get a paradoxical reaction where there's going to be a fighting back of not letting go. Whereas if you go at it with a very gentle vibration, you're kind of convincing the system to trust and to relax into it.
Correct. So what we didn't touch on just quickly is fascia. So fascia is your connective tissue. So that's what holds you together, basically. If you didn't have that, you'd fall apart, even if you have got the skeletal or the muscular system. So fascia is the connection to everything that we have. So it's even now they're understanding that that's where we hold emotions, etc. So it sits, the lymphatic system sits just underneath that. So if there's rigidity in the fascia, so, you've got back pain or something like that, that will impact also on the lymphatics. So that's your structure equals function again. So one of the things I found with lymphatics and fascia is vibration. So think of the vibration plate. Vibration, though, those can be a little bit intense for some people, but vibration allows movement, right? It's so the body can't get, so that whereas they're a sergeant at your guns are more muscular. They're like, let's pound at the muscle, which is fantastic if you've got muscular issues. Whereas vibration's all about trying to get the glide back in. And
adhesions in the fascia will prevent the muscle from healing.
Exactly.
Like, let's not forget, anybody who's had serious muscular, even rotator cuff, knee issues, if the fascia isn't brought online, you don't get that resolution.
Correct. So that's why Flow Vibrate was created. And it was initially created because of the lymphatics and because that's one area we can't put compression. Like, I can imagine no one would want compression around their throat. So it was an issue for us. So we had to think about, I had to think outside the square, and that's when Flow Vibrate came about. So it's a handheld tool. So it's designed, it's got 3 different vibrations in it. And there's not frequency to it. It's just purely, light, medium, and hard. And the hard one was designed so if you wanted to use it on other parts of your body. So it doesn't just need to be for the face and the neck area. But what we did find is that when people started using it to the degree that they have now, is not only did it drain the puffiness of the face, the sinuses, it also released TMJ, so the jaw, the stress that people hold when they grind their teeth or their pathways when they're not breathing correctly at night. It helps stimulate vagus, so people were sleeping better. But then it could be used on like your armpit or your arm puff, where you put it under the armpit and just leave it there. And that's the great thing, is you can just press and hold. So if we go back to what can I do for myself, when we talked earlier about lying on the floor with your feet up against the wall, you could put either a warm pack on your abdomen to help increase the vascular flow to your organs so that you're actually encouraging the liver to process, or you can put it on your kidneys if you prefer. And then you can have a hand tool where you're just gently placing, because you're not doing too much, so you're not putting the body back into parasympathetic, you're just allowing. And you can use this on the abdomen. There's a technique that we have for constipation. You can use it on your legs, the back of the knees, wherever there's lymphatics, it can be used. And I think that's where the advantage was.
Yeah, no, and it fits in your pocket. So if you guys are listening to this, you're going to want to check out the YouTube just so you can see it. It's a cute little device. It sometimes gets mistaken for another type of device because it vibrates. And it's handheld, and I'm sure it's got its purposes there. But, if, again, head on over to YouTube and you can see me. I've got it here right underneath my jawbone, and it's going to help to open up
the lymphatics.
You can use it on your face, which is really interesting for people who get really puffy under the eyes and the sinuses, right?
Yes.
And then, so this is the Flow Vibrate, a handy dandy little tool. And it's also really good because where the button is, it's not going to get turned on in your bag. So it won't embarrass you going through security.
Yeah, it does. Look, when I created it, it was not meant to be thought about that as a design, but unfortunately it came out like that. And it wasn't until a couple of people said, I went, oh, oops. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, we're all about flow. So we don't get caught up into what you do. It's more about that it was designed because of the vibration and because it contours around the jawline so well. And everything has a placement when you're doing with lymph nodes. So yes, there is. And we have sequences to show you how to use it.
That's amazing. And where are the sequences on your website?
There's on a YouTube. So if you were to put in Flow Vibrate, you can. We've also got an Instagram that has them, like how to use them on the abdomen, how to use it on the axilla and the breast tissue, like things like that, so that you can use it in different places.
Beautiful. And wait, there's more, because Desiree didn't stop there. Tell me about the ball. So there's, by the time this podcast hits, this baby will probably be launched. This looks like kind of a knobby little ball. It's silicone, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And if I hold my thumb down at the bottom, it'll start to vibrate. And if I hit again, it'll vibrate in waves?
Yeah, it's like an oscillation. It's like a syncopatic, if someone's into that understanding. So it's at different ranges so that you're creating the ability for the body, because vibration after a time the body might get used to it, whereas this is to change the mode of it. So the idea is coming back to fascia. Well, one of the things first was we didn't have anything in our suit for the axilla or the armpit, so we wanted to be able to put them into the armpit so that you could get that drainage through there while we were moving, especially if you're dealing with any sort of, armpit, breast, chest issues. We wanted to be able to accommodate for that. But I think one of the big things coming out of everything is that I've seen is this fascia component. And everything I was looking at to consider was they were a lot bigger and harder, and you couldn't lie in them, you couldn't work with them in a way that was either practitioner based or, as an individual at home, if you want to lie on something, you don't really want a big sort of size ball that's quite hard to maneuver around. So this is where that all came from, and that's why we did the 3 different modes. And it's been, this is the prototype that you're seeing right now. So it really has been outstanding to what I had, put the thought in behind it, but didn't really know if we'd get the outcome. So very, very excited. So this is more, you could use similar to what you're using Flow Vibrate if you wanted to. Where this is more of an advantage is in the diaphragm, to release the diaphragm.
Right. And so we don't think of that, right? We don't think of releasing that diaphragm.
And that is where you hold, especially if you're a woman who worry about a lot, you hold a lot of stress in that stomach. It's like you've been punched in the guts. That's why that saying's there. And that is where there's a thing called the cisterna chyli. And the cisterna chyli is like a reservoir where all the fluid that's coming from the legs, lower abdomen, meets at that point before it comes up to the thoracic duct. And what we've found is that it changes its way that it is based on what's going on for you. So they've done studies on this. They've actually done x-rays and everything to show it changes shape based on your illness. So, we find with really stressed out people, especially women, and who, that are in that worry stage and all the rest, it's like a fist. It's like having a fist in there. So this is where this is great. You can just lie there and put your hands on top of the ball and just leave it, and it'll slowly create this pulsation where it's just trying to get it to move gently rather than, again, pushing and shoving you to change. We're allowing it. And I think, if you've got knee surgery or you've done any sort of major, where you've got major scarring and that kind of thing, like we're testing it on, we talked earlier, about episiotomy scars. There's a lot of prostate issues. There's things like that, whereas this thing, you're fully clothed, you can just be sitting on it, maneuvering it gently to create change. So it's in early days of studies, but very, very excited to see what we've seen so far.
So this is beautiful. So both of these target the fascia, and then also, as a result, lymphatic drainage.
Correct.
Great. And so this will be called, this is Flow Vibrate, the little handheld.
Yep,
the first
and that's
one.
called Flow Orb.
Flow Orb. Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. And so this will be hitting the world sometime at the beginning of February.
Yes,
we're
correct.
We're
launching February 2024. Yes.
This is exciting. This is all exciting. All of our little vibrating toys here. So this is the stuff you can take home. And then the Flow Presso. Basically, do you have yet any kind of directory that people can go to find a practitioner near them?
Yes, so if you go onto our website, there is a Try, T-R-Y page where you can go and put in your details, and we will locate a place near you and give you an idea where to go. So that is definitely available for people. We're, as I said, we only launched February 2020, but to be honest, it was August last year that we really started to pump out, and it's changing every couple of weeks, the location. So it's just a matter of letting us know, and then we try to find someone near you.
Amazing. Well, Desiree, this has been amazing.
Thank
you so much. Thank you for your time. We're in Las Vegas right now, guys. So by the time this hits, A4M will be long gone. We decided to record this while we were fresh before the conference hits, because find us in 4 days, we'll both be lying in Flow Presso suits, kind of catatonic.
Hopefully.
Yeah, with any luck. So thank you so much to everybody who's been listening. Please send us your questions and your comments. This is such an incredible growing space and growing area. And Desiree, you guys are doing such amazing work research-wise. So where can people find you and learn more about the work that you're doing and kind of keep abreast of everything that you're uncovering?
Yeah, so we have obviously our website, which will have all the details in this podcast. But, and also I am on Instagram under my name. But, we're bringing out more and more stuff. We're just, changing our website at the moment, and there'll be a lot more clinical environment, clinical information for you if you want it on there by early next year, hopefully, all going well. And
early this year, next year, like 2024.
2024, yeah,
right.
We will be launching more information. We've had a lot going on with what we could and couldn't say, so we've just been wanting to do this. We're very big about transparency and ensuring that what we're putting up on our website people know. But our research can be located that we did with our first responders. You can request that from us as well. We're more than happy to share that. And any other information that you think that might be relevant, just reach out, especially via the website. The team are there all the time, even though we're based in New Zealand. We are, the great advantage of time difference is when you're asleep, we're returning your response. So when you wake up, it's there. So, we're always around.
So what's the website URL is
flowpresso.co.nz. So we're just still under there. We're going to have a .com soon though. So.
All right. We're waiting for the .com. But in the meantime, it's flowpresso, that's 2 E's, 2 S's, sorry, 1 E, 2 S's, .co.nz. Mm-hmm. So just make sure you don't let that .com come in just yet. It's coming.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been so great.
Yeah, it was lovely to talk to everyone.